Trump got up and he said this, and it kind of fascinated me, Colonel. He said, I actually cannot get anyone to explain to me why the Democratic White House would allow this influx of what you're saying is 30, 35 million people. He said, I actually can't find any reasonable motive to that. Now, some people say these people are going to vote Democrat in the future, but Trump doesn't really buy that as a reason. He can't actually come to a reason of why this would be allowed. And I'm curious if you know of a reason or why you think this is happening and then what the implications of it are.
Well, first of all, let me correct you on one point. I didn't say 35 million people came up. I'm saying 10 to 12. And when you bring them in, you add them to the totals of illegals who are already here.
Yes.
You come up with a 30 to 35 million number. And I got that number from people working in Homeland Security for Mayorkas. And incidentally, everyone in the Department of Homeland Security utterly hates and despises the man because they know he's working tirelessly to destroy us. Now, why do I say that? Go back and look at the reasons why we shut down immigration after World War I. We shut it down completely in 1924. And one of the principal reasons that people gave for shutting it down was we're not getting the people we want. The great myth of American history is that everybody who came to the United States was poor and stupid. No. In fact, de Tocqueville, the brilliant French historian who came and visited us in the 1840s, he absolutely got it right. By the way, so did Max Weber, the German sociologist who came later and reached the same conclusions. He said, the United States is the creature of the middle class. The people that showed up were not all indentured servants, not by a long shot. They came later on. The people that came and created the foundations were middle class. And if you want to understand the American Revolution and what happens and everything attending to it, you've got to understand the Puritan Revolution and the English Civil Wars and Cromwell. Cromwell is as much a founder of the United States as anybody. You draw a straight line from Cromwell to George Washington, from George Washington to Abraham Lincoln. All right? That's the country we were. Suddenly in the 1880s and 90s, the Democrats in particular saw virtue in bringing in large numbers of Europeans from Southern Europe and Eastern Europe that they could then repurpose as future Democratic voters. And so these people came in and they were not all middle class. They were not all arriving in a state of pristine education. We were the leader in the world for literacy in 1900, but it wasn't because of a public school system. We had none. It's because the people coming were already educated. Bismarck was furious. He had to shut down emigration coming out of Germany because he said, we're losing all the talent. Everybody who has any talent and ambition and imagination is going to America. And then somebody said to him, well, don't worry, Chancellor, they're Germans. Then we'll have friends in America. He said, you're an idiot. Absolutely not. The Germans become Americans, you fool. Don't you get it? Well, Bismarck was right. So we were doing very, very well until we got this new influx. And then we had this thing called Cosa Nostra, mafia, criminality. And on top of that, we started noticing that large numbers of people coming in were communists who were trying to organize against the very government that was admitting them. And so people said, we've got to shut this down. So we shut it down in 1924. It didn't really reopen until after World War II, but we had legislation on the books that said you can emigrate from country X based on the proportion of people from country X that already exist, because we had a balance. We were comfortable with that balance. We had very low crime rates. We had a very successful industrial base. We had a thriving economy. In 1965, all of that was overturned by two senators. One was named Javits from New York City, and the other was Kennedy. And they opened the floodgates, as they put it, to, quote unquote, the developing world. Now, that didn't have an immediate impact, but over time it did. And by the time you get to Ronald Reagan, he decides the solution is amnesty. And so millions of people who had come up from Mexico simply received amnesty and said, everybody said, well, see, it's over now. It got much worse. That was an incentive for everyone, everywhere to come to the United States. And so all that Mayorkas and Biden and everyone in the administration have done is take a page out of Reagan's book. Let's just open it up, let everybody in and tell everybody that it'll eventually exhaust itself. Well, it hasn't, and it won't. But once again, we're bringing in huge numbers of people that we have no chance to ever assimilate. But there are people in Washington that are happy with that.